What if I told you that some of heavy metal's biggest legends didn't just destroy their careers? They ended up behind prison bars. We're talking about musicians who once sold out arenas, topped the charts, and built millions of loyal fans, only to see it all collapse because of crimes that changed lives forever. In this countdown, you'll discover how Tim Lambesis was caught trying to hire a hitman, why Varg Vikernes became one of metal's most infamous convicted killers, how Vince Neil's reckless decision ended in tragedy, and why several legendary artists lost everything after facing the justice system. But save your judgment until the end, because our number one case is so disturbing that an entire band's legacy was erased almost overnight. And the final story involves a creator with millions of followers whose shocking crimes left fans completely betrayed. If you're fascinated by the real history of heavy metal, the biggest scandals, and the true stories behind rock's most notorious musicians, subscribe now. These aren't rumors or backstage gossip. They're the real cases that changed metal history forever. Let's get started. Number 1. Ian Watkins, The Fall of Lost Prophets. Let's start with Ian Watkins, the charismatic frontman of Lost Prophets. If you were into alternative rock in the 2000s, you know this band. Radio hits, sold-out shows across the globe, magazine covers, album certifications. Watkins had it all. The image, the talent, the devoted fan base that believed every word he sang. Except none of it mattered, because behind closed doors, Ian Watkins was living a double life so disturbing that it makes everything about his public persona feel like a calculated deception. In 2013, everything came crashing down when Watkins was arrested on charges involving the sexual abuse of children. We're not talking about one victim here. The investigation revealed a string of offenses: conspiracy to rape, possession of child pornography, and other horrific crimes against very young children. The case sent absolutely shockwaves through the music industry, because Watkins had built his entire brand on accessibility and connection with younger fans. The trial exposed everything. The evidence was overwhelming, and in 2015, Watkins was convicted and sentenced to 29 years in prison, a sentence reflecting the gravity and severity of his crimes. You'd think that would be the end of the story, but Watkins' time behind bars has been anything but quiet. In August of 2023, just years into his sentence, Watkins was brutally stabbed by fellow inmates at HMP Wakefield. His attackers used a sharpened toilet brush as a weapon. Prison sources revealed the assault stemmed from a drug debt. Watkins had obtained a synthetic drug from another prisoner, but refused to pay the 3 times markup demanded. Despite spending thousands on his own protection, Watkins remains one of the most despised inmates in the entire facility. Lost Prophets disbanded immediately following his arrest. Promoters pulled their tours. Record labels scrubbed their music from platforms. In one moment, an entire discography became radioactive. Watkins won't be eligible for parole until 2031. He's serving his sentence in one of the United Kingdom's highest security facilities, where his notoriety makes every single day a threat to his safety. His victims will carry the trauma of what he did for the rest of their lives. His bandmates had to rebuild their careers without him. And the metal community learned a brutal lesson about the difference between stage persona and actual character. Number 2. Vince Neil, the reckless frontman. Vince Neil was the living embodiment of 1980s excess. Mötley Crüe's frontman represented everything about that era. The wild partying, the danger, the complete disregard for conventional rules. That image made him a legend. It also made him dangerous. On December 31, 1984, New Year's Eve, Vince got behind the wheel after heavy drinking. His passenger was Nicholas Dingley, drummer for the Finnish glam metal band Hanoi Rocks. They were in Los Angeles, driving on a wet street. Vince lost control of his sports car, and the vehicle crashed head-on into another car. The impact was catastrophic. Nicholas Dingley died instantly from his injuries. Others in the other vehicle were seriously hurt. Emergency responders had to cut bodies out of twisted metal. Vince Neil was convicted of vehicular manslaughter. But here's where the story gets controversial and infuriating to many people. He served just 30 days in jail. 30 days for killing someone. The sentencing outraged victims' families and the public alike, with many arguing it represented the lenient treatment wealthy musicians received from the justice system. But Vince's legal problems didn't end there, not even close. Throughout the decades that followed, Neil accumulated more charges and legal troubles. In 2016, a fan accused him of assault after a concert. She claimed he grabbed her hair and dragged her to the ground. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor battery. Even recently, Vince faced legal issues over unpaid fees owed to his defense attorneys. Money he apparently didn't think he needed to pay. Despite all of this, Vince remained prolific. He kept performing. He kept recording. He never faced the kind of career devastation that Ian Watkins experienced. The music industry seemed willing to forgive him, or at least move past what he'd done. And that's part of what makes this story so complicated. Vince Neil killed someone while driving drunk. By all rights, his career should have ended that night. Instead, he became a cautionary tale about wealth and influence in the music industry, and how those things can sometimes insulate you from real consequences. Number 3. Tim Lambesis. Now we shift to a different kind of crime, but one equally shocking in its implications. Tim Lambesis was the frontman for As I Lay Dying, a Christian metalcore band with a massive international following. If you were in the metalcore scene at any point in the 2000s, you know this band. Their music was aggressive, raw, powerful. And Lambesis presented himself as someone whose faith anchored his music, someone whose lyrics about struggle and spiritual resilience actually meant something. Millions of fans believed him. In 2013, everything changed when Lambesis was arrested for something almost unthinkable. He attempted to hire a hitman to murder his wife. The hitman was actually an undercover federal agent. During the investigation, authorities obtained secret recordings of Lambesis, providing detailed information about his wife. He told the undercover agent exactly where she went, what times she traveled, her routine. He provided payment, he gave specific instructions. Everything was documented. The sheer premeditation of it was chilling. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of rage. This was planned, calculated, cold. The contradiction between his public persona, a man singing about faith and redemption, and his actual behavior was so stark that it shattered the Christian music community. Fans felt lied to. The metalcore scene had to reconcile the fact that one of its biggest names had essentially plotted his wife's murder. Lambesis was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison in 2014. He ended up serving approximately 2 years before being released in 2016. Here's where the story gets even more interesting and controversial. After his release, Lambesis attempted a comeback. As I Lay Dying reformed. They released new music. They toured. They rebuilt their fan base. The violent crime is still there in his history. It's still documented. But somehow, the metal community and metalcore fan base proved more forgiving of Lambesis than they were of some others on this list. That's partially because he served less time, partially because the crime didn't have a fatal victim, and partially because metal culture has always had complicated relationships with darker behavior. But ask his ex-wife, and she'll tell you a different story about forgiveness. Number 4. Varg Vikernes. Murder in the black metal underground. Now we're diving into one of metal's most violent chapters, the Norwegian black metal scene of the early 1990s. Varg Vikernes was a central figure in this movement. Known for his solo project Burzum and his violently anti-Christian ideology, Vikernes represented black metal in its most extreme form. He wasn't playing a character on stage, he genuinely believed the things he sang about. In 1993, Varg killed someone. The victim was Øystein Arseth, known as Euronymous, guitarist for the band Mayhem and owner of Helvete, one of Norway's most important black metal record stores. The murder shocked the underground metal community because it wasn't hypothetical darkness anymore. It was real violence. Varg was convicted not only for this murder, but also for a series of church arsons across Norway. These weren't random fires. They were targeted attacks on historic wooden churches, acts meant as rebellion against Christianity itself. The Norwegian legal system sentenced Vikernes to 21 years, the maximum possible sentence at that time in Norway. He served 15 years before his release in 2009. Even while incarcerated, Vikernes remained a figure in the underground metal community. He continued writing. Prison recordings circulated through the metal underground. He maintained influence from behind bars. After his release, Vikernes has continued being one of metal's most controversial figures. He's spoken openly about extremist views. He's positioned himself as an ideological leader rather than just a musician. Some sections of the metal community still support him. Others completely reject him. His case represents a turning point in metal history, the moment when the line between artistic rebellion and actual criminal violence became impossible to ignore. Number 5. Faust Bourdon, The Calculated Murder. Before Emperor became one of black metal's most respected and influential bands, their drummer Faust Bourdon committed a murder so calculated and violent that it stands out even in the brutal history of the Norwegian black metal scene. In 1992, Faust lured a man named Magne Andreassen into a forest in Lillehammer, Norway. The victim allegedly had made an unwanted sexual advance toward Faust. Instead of walking away or handling the situation through legal means, Faust made a different choice. He stabbed the man 37 times. 37 times. That's not self-defense. That's not a moment of rage that went too far. That's systematic, calculated violence. The level of overkill suggests genuine fury, or something deeper and more disturbed. Faust didn't immediately confess. Instead, he remained a free man for over a year, while investigators looked into church burnings and other crimes connected to the black metal scene. Eventually, law enforcement connected him to the murder, and Faust confessed. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, but served approximately 9 years before his release in 2003. Here's what makes Faust's story different from some of the others on this list. He appears to have genuinely changed. Unlike Vikernes, who continues expressing extremist ideology, or others who seem unrepentant, Faust has expressed remorse for what he did. He successfully rebuilt his life and music career after prison. He's earned critical acclaim and awards with other musical projects. He seems to have actually processed his crime and attempted to become a better person. That doesn't erase what he did. Magne Andreassen is still dead, murdered by someone who stabbed him nearly 40 times. But it shows that criminal history in metal doesn't always mean permanent darkness or an inability to change. Faust's case marks one of the darkest moments in Norwegian black metal history, but also one of the only redemption arcs on this entire list. Number 6. Carl Logan. Carl Logan was the guitarist for Manowar. The metal band literally branded themselves as the kings of metal. Their entire aesthetic is about glory, honor, battle, and dominance. Powerful music, powerful imagery, an army of dedicated fans. In 2018, that image got demolished overnight when the FBI raided Carl Logan's home in North Carolina. What they found was devastating: a massive cache of child pornography, hundreds of images and videos depicting the exploitation of minors. This wasn't a small collection. This was federal-level evidence of serious, ongoing criminal behavior. The investigation showed this wasn't a mistake or a lapse in judgment. This was someone actively seeking out and collecting material that documented the abuse of children. Manowar immediately removed Logan from the band. They publicly condemned his actions. They made crystal clear that they did not and would not support him. The metal community largely stood with the band's decision. Here was a clear case where action needed to be taken. Logan pleaded guilty to multiple counts of possession and distribution of child pornography. In 2022, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. He remains incarcerated. He won't be eligible for early release until at least 2027. His involvement in such heinous crimes sent serious shockwaves through the metal community. Fans realized that some of their heroes were hiding deeply disturbing secrets. Logan's arrest and sentencing essentially ended his career in metal. He went from performing in front of thousands to sitting in a federal prison cell, a dramatic fall that few artists experience. Manowar's legacy took a hit as well. The band had to navigate conversations about whether they'd missed warning signs, whether anyone knew about Logan's behavior, and how they moved forward as a band. Number 7. Dave Holland. Dave Holland was the drummer for Judas Priest during crucial years of the band's rise. He played on some of their most classic albums: British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance, records that defined metal for entire generations. Outside of the spotlight, Holland was living a completely different life. In 2004, years after leaving Judas Priest, Holland was convicted in the United Kingdom on multiple counts related to sexual offenses against a teenage boy with learning disabilities. The victim had come to Holland for drum lessons, which is how the abuse started. The charges included attempted rape and indecent assault, serious crimes involving the exploitation of a vulnerable minor. Holland denied the allegations, but the evidence was sufficient for conviction. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, and unlike some others on this list, he served his complete sentence. He was released in 2012. After prison, Holland lived quietly, eventually relocating to Spain, where he could live away from public scrutiny. In 2018, at age 69, he died. Judas Priest acknowledged his passing with regret, but the band also recognized that his post-music actions were deeply troubling. Holland had betrayed the trust of a vulnerable young person who came to him specifically to learn music. That's not just a crime, it's a profound violation of the mentor-student relationship. Holland's case is one of the most grim reminders on this entire list: the abuse of trust by someone in a position of authority. A young person seeks out mentorship, and instead of getting guidance, they experience trauma. Number 8. John Schaffer. Political violence. John Schaffer is the founder, lead guitarist, and main songwriter for Iced Earth, an American heavy metal band known for intense personalities and politically charged perspectives. Schaffer, in particular, has never been shy about expressing his worldview. In January 2021, Schaffer's worldview led him to travel to Washington, D.C. and participate in the Capitol riot, the violent breach of the U.S. Capitol building. Federal investigators identified Schaffer inside the building, breaching police barricades and entering restricted areas. Images captured during the riot showed him actively participating in the violence. He was arrested and faced serious federal charges, including assault and obstruction of Congress. These weren't minor charges, they were felonies with real prison time attached. Rather than face trial, Schaffer agreed to cooperate with federal authorities. Reports indicate he provided information to prosecutors, which helped lead to reduced charges against him. In early 2025, Schaffer remained on probation, but had avoided actual prison time through his plea deal and cooperation. His involvement in the Capitol insurrection devastated his career. Iced Earth's lineup dissolved. Side projects collapsed. Schaffer went from being a respected metal pioneer to being more known for his political radicalism and legal battles than for his actual music. The Iced Earth fanbase fractured, with some supporters standing by Schaffer and others completely rejecting him. Venues became hesitant to book him. Record labels distanced themselves. His case raises questions about the responsibility musicians have when they step into political activism. It also shows how one moment of poor judgment can irreparably damage decades of career building. Number 9. Ronnie Radke. Ronnie Radke, the lead vocalist of Falling in Reverse, represents a different kind of cautionary tale, the repeated offender who never quite learns. Early in his career, Radke was sentenced to probation following his involvement in a Las Vegas desert altercation in 2006. During this fight, a young man was fatally injured, not directly by Radke, but during an incident where Radke was a participant. He was considered partly responsible and received probation, but Radke violated those probation terms repeatedly. He missed court-mandated check-ins. He failed to comply with the conditions set by the court. This led to incarceration. Starting around 2010, Radke served approximately 2.5 years in prison. During his time behind bars, his band didn't wait around. Falling in Reverse continued forward, replacing Radke with new vocalists and continuing their touring schedule. It was a clear message: the band would survive without him. But when Radke was released, he rebuilt his career with a reformed lineup. He came back stronger in some ways, channeling the anger and defiance from his prison experience into his music. He spoke openly about his mistakes. He turned his outlaw image into part of his brand. The difference between Radke and some others on this list is that he never faced charges for anything as serious as assault or violence against specific individuals. His issues stemmed more from poor decision-making and failure to comply with the legal system. That said, Radke remains one of modern metalcore's most prominent figures, with a loyal and dedicated fan base that has largely forgiven or overlooked his past legal troubles. His case shows how the metal community sometimes rallies around its stars, even when those stars have documented histories of legal problems, a generosity not always extended to others. Number 10. Austin Jones, the YouTuber Predator. Our final case brings us to the modern era and the internet age, where fame comes differently, but the capacity for harm remains exactly the same. Austin Jones was a YouTuber who built massive audiences, millions and millions of subscribers, by doing something really accessible, covering pop songs in heavy metal style. That was his entire brand. Pop music, metal treatment, approachable personality. He seemed like a genuine, down-to-earth guy who loved music and wanted to share that passion with viewers. His fans trusted him. Younger fans especially watched his content religiously. He seemed like someone they could relate to, someone who understood music and appreciated his audience. Except Austin Jones was living a hidden life that shattered that image completely. In 2017, everything came crashing down when Jones was arrested and charged with soliciting sexually explicit videos from underage female fans. We're talking about children, minors who followed his channel and admired him. The investigation revealed that Jones had deliberately manipulated these young girls. He convinced them that participating in this criminal behavior, creating explicit videos for him, made them special. It made them connected to him. It gave them an insider status with someone they admired. That's textbook predatory grooming behavior, using access and perceived connection to exploit vulnerable minors. The FBI investigation into Austin Jones exposed a disturbing pattern across multiple victims. This wasn't one mistake. This was systematic exploitation of his position and his platform. In 2019, after years of investigation and legal proceedings, Jones pleaded guilty to charges related to child pornography and enticement of minors. The federal court sentenced him to 10 years in prison, with his earliest possible release set for 2027. His YouTube channels were deleted. His social media accounts were scrubbed. The metal community and the broader YouTube community felt the betrayal deeply. Millions of people had watched this guy's content, recommended his videos to friends, supported his channel, only to discover he was using that platform to prey on children. Austin Jones's case is one of the most chilling reminders on this entire list. Fame and audience access can become tools for predatory behavior. A person can build a persona that attracts younger viewers specifically so they can exploit them. And it serves as a brutal reminder that the internet, while amazing for connecting people around music and shared passions, can also be weaponized by people with predatory intent. There you have it. 10 heavy metal musicians whose lives took catastrophic turns. 10 cases that shattered careers, devastated fans, and left permanent marks on metal history. These aren't stories about canceled culture or people making mistakes and paying the price proportionally. These are stories about serious crimes: murder, sexual abuse of minors, violence, exploitation. The thing that connects all of these cases isn't just that these people were famous. It's that fame gave them access and platforms that they then weaponized or failed to use responsibly. For the victims in these cases, and there are many, no amount of music can undo the harm that was done. No apology tour can repair the trauma. No comeback album can erase what happened. The metal community has complicated relationships with these stories. Some artists got second chances, others were completely blacklisted. Some fans have forgiven, while others can never move past what was done. What we can take from all of this is a reminder that talent and stage presence don't equal character. A great song doesn't excuse harmful behavior. And fame is not a get-out-of-jail-free card, or at least it shouldn't be. If this deep dive into metal's darkest chapters was eye-opening and you want more stories that pull back the curtain on the music industry, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Which of these stories surprised you? What's your take on second chances and redemption in the metal community? Subscribe to this channel so you never miss jaw-dropping updates on metal history, legendary musicians, and the stories that shaped rock and metal culture. And make absolutely sure you ring that bell icon because we're constantly uploading new content about the legends, both the inspiring stories and the devastating ones. Thanks for watching, stay metal, and we'll see you in the next one.